How many heard yesterday? Well, I didn't scare you away. My wife would say that was an accomplishment. All right, is everyone good this morning? I really want to plug in. I know Dan is after me, and I don't want to eat up any time. There are some, you can give me just a hear less on this. There are some series in the back that I would encourage you to grab a hold of. One of them is probably from 10 years ago on divine escapes and demonic doors. If you want to get any information on such things as dealing with demons, attracting God's presence, surviving a demonic safari, this is a great 4-message CD. I have a background in psychology. I have consulted with Department of Mental Health. I've created programs for drug rehabilitation centers all across America. We had one of the premier drug rehabs for years during the Bush administration, and I would encourage you to grab a hold of that. And then there's a series back there on thriving in a crisis economy. And we're in a crisis economy. We just don't feel it yet because it's been held together with toothpicks and bubble gum. But you cannot. I'm shocked at the housing increase right now. It baffles me. I'm so baffled I sold my house because I figured this is the rare economy that I can get more than it's worth. And but we are already in a crisis economy. There's more job losses than we have seen over the last 15 years combined together. But the government keeps handing out checks and they keep stopping banks from entering into foreclosures. There's close to 5 million homes in America that are on forbearance right now that are being held up to go into foreclosure. Once that hits the market, there'll be a real estate crisis. There's already a job crisis. You're in a job crisis when we went to McDonald's yesterday, get a cup of coffee, no one's working. So we're basically paying people to stay home. So at some point, that's going to come back. That series deals with how to deal with a crisis economy. So with that in mind, or not in mind, I want to share some things with you this morning. This is leadership, right? This is the content. So I want to give you some things. We made a shift years ago, probably in 2000. Our church had been growing. We had just moved into a new sanctuary that's at 1,200. And I was burnt. I was getting worn out. And I had already practiced the principle of, empowering people around me. And I was still burnt. And so I changed based on a revelation God gave me. I began to segregate the congregation, separate individuals in the congregation to build a multi-layer structure to be able to grow the church healthy. And I want to share some of that with you this morning. First, I want to say I've spent a lot of time in Africa. In the late 1600s, the West evangelized Africa. Big evangelistic move all through the 1700s, 1800s, and even in the early 1900s. And the process of evangelism has stayed the same for probably 300 years. And that content was based on bringing the gospel and discipleship training, which was based on serving to these nations, which were undeveloped nations, impoverished nations, and they would set up schools, they would feed the poor, and they taught at that point that poverty, because they were in poverty, so they just simply said that your poverty was actually an opportunity. They didn't say that you needed to be in poverty in order to get an opportunity. They just called it as it was. You're broke, but even though you're broke and you're impoverished, it's still an opportunity. Right? We got that. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to word that incorrectly. They didn't do anything wrong with that. But they did teach that poverty at that moment was an opportunity for deep spirituality. They based the discipleship on serving, evangelism on salvation. Evangelism on salvation, discipleship on serving. The problem is that their deep spiritual training on serving never shaped their culture and transformed their community. Let me say that again. The basic foundation of biblical training for serving never transformed their community because they were never taught how to rule. They were only taught how to serve. And serving never solves ruling issues. So what they failed to include in the gospel message was discipleship on rulership. And the number one need in all of Africa and all of the East has been dealing with the plague of tyrants, warlords, crooked governments for years. And serving doesn't get them out. Serving a crooked king a cup of water doesn't get the crooked king off of the throne. And unfortunately, that has crept into the church. During the seeker-friendly movement, how do we serve the sinner better? Well, we got to teach the sinner how to serve Christ better. You still good? Yes. The most common type for typology of church members, common reference in the New Testament, it's found probably over 60 times in the New Testament alone. I'll read you a couple of the verses. Matthew chapter 9, verse 36. When Jesus saw the multitude, he was moved with compassion on them because they fainted and they were scattered abroad. They fainted, they were scattered. He had compassion. They were fainting, they were scattered, running. They weren't unified. They weren't assembled, they were scattered. Even though they were in the same fold, they were as sheep having no shepherd. Jesus gave you the characteristics of sheep. Sheep faint, sheep scatter, sheep need compassion, sheep need a shepherd. Matthew chapter 10, verse 6, go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Matthew chapter 10, verse 16, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves, therefore be as wise as serpents and harmless as doves. This is a type in the New Testament. All types in the Bible reveal some characteristic or what we would call personages. You're a citizen, that reveals a citizen of the kingdom. Book of Ephesians deals with that. And it's giving you a personage and a characteristic for you to recognize that though you have your citizenship here on earth based on where you live, you also have a citizenship in heaven also, and the citizenship of heaven trumps your citizenship of America. So our citizenship, our greater passport unites us as being a part of the global kingdom, the spiritual kingdom of God, and that's very important. Is that making sense? This is like nothing heavy-revy. This should be one-on-one Christianity, basic leadership, but I'm going to take a turn on it in a second because this is just the foundation of this. I'm trying to get you to understand is what we disseminate and feed our congregation and our leaders is going to come back and be regurgitated to us. It's going to be multiplied and presented back to us. And so this is a type that Jesus gave. A type was the sheep. I want to give you another type in the Bible that is mentioned through the Old Testament and is kind of hidden here when it comes to attaching this type to individuals. In Jeremiah, God speaking with Jeremiah and Jeremiah speaking with God, the wrestling match between Jeremiah. You read through, Jeremiah, nothing great happened in Jeremiah's life. We know this because he wrote a whole book called Lamentations. He was a weeping prophet of the Old Testament. You know what I'm saying? He never authored a book in the sense of just having a bestseller. Every time he ministered, negative things happened. He was thrown in prison. He was whipped, beaten, all sorts of things. And he wrestled with God. In fact, sometimes God answers questions that are in Jeremiah's mind that Jeremiah doesn't even want to answer. My wife's one of her favorite verses. I know the plans that I have for you. How many remember that verse? Plans of good and not harm. Well, Jeremiah never asked that question. It's like this obscure verse that God is answering some of the psychological issues that Jeremiah is going in. And Jeremiah is questioning God's purpose in his life. Like, what's up? And he doesn't want to say to God that your plan sucks. You know what I'm saying? This is just like, it's shot. This is like, it ain't working for me. So God responds to him and reminds Jeremiah, by the way, I know the plans that I have for you. And it's plans of good. I know you're not experiencing good, but hey, it's going to get better. There's a plan in this, and not to do harm. Though you're experiencing harm, that's not my plan for you. There's a plan, a divine plan that's overshadowing the current circumstances of your life. And Jeremiah's in this hustle, this tussle with God. But though God, it's in verse 3, Jeremiah chapter 12, verse 3, but thou, O Lord, knowest me. Thou hast seen me and tried my heart towards thee. Previous two verses of scripture, why did the wicked prosper? He sees the success of the wicked, and then he wants to deal with them. So he's responding. Why do the wicked prosper? He's wrestling with God. Why? I don't know. Why do good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people? Very simplistic thing, you know what I'm saying? And the disciples had that same concept when they seen a man that was palsy from birth. Who sinned that this man was born like this? You know what I mean? It's a simplistic way of understanding trial and tribulation. Somehow, somebody wronged somebody, and that's how we ended up in the circumstance that we're in. Pull them out like sheep for the slaughter. Prepare them for the day of slaughter. How long shall the land mourn and the herbs of the field wither for the wickedness of them that dwell therein? The beasts are consumed like birds, because they say, he shall not see our last end and not our latter days. Verse 5, God responds to this. He's saying, why do the wicked prosper? Pull them up like sheep led for the slaughter. Deal with them right now. I'm stressed out over this. They're driving me nuts. God responds, if thou canst run with the footmen, and they have wearied thee. If you're running with your equals and they have wearied thee, then how can you contend with horses? That's what God says. Wait a minute. So you're struggling right now, and all you're doing is you're running with your equal, but then how then will you be able to contend with the horses? My goal for you is to contend with the horses, to run with the strength of the horse, and you're getting stressed with men of your own equal. Got that? We usually lift verse 5 out of that, and we have that as a little, hey, why can't thou run with the horses? And if thou in the land of peace wherein thou trusted, they are wearying you, how then will you do in this swelling of Jordan? So God might look down from heaven at you in America and say, you're stressed, but you have freedom. You can go to the store and you can buy things. Even when toilet paper is short, you can still get through it, because life at times does stink. But God would say to you that if you're struggling in America, how could you have ever dealt with equals that you would have in China who are being thrown in prison and the Nazi concentration camps, and you have been belly achers when it comes to the things that have been allotted to you. You're asking me to help you pay your rent, but you at least have a house. So God would look at you and say, you're struggling and you're complaining and you're living like this. Jeremiah would look down from heaven and say, that's a struggle? You got nothing. Fair enough. Just fair enough. Watch out when you complain to God. Because God would look down and say, but I wanted you to run not just with the footmen, that's just men of your equal, women of your equal, but with horses. I wanted you to have strength beyond your humanity. To run with the horses means there needs to be a transformation that takes place. You can't run with the horses. I can't run with a stallion. I could watch Rocky 4 times and I still can't run with stallions. Some of you get that later on. Stallions. Adrian. No. Job deals with this, and God's Job's going through some stuff, and God's not going to deal with Job. So Jeremiah, look at the quality of that prophet in his day. Jeremiah is a prophet in the midst of a mess. Job is just in a mess. We don't know if he's a prophet. We don't really know what Job is. Job's just an example that I don't want to be Job. Right? He's just like an example for me. I don't really know what to do with Job. You know what I'm saying? I kind of skip over that book many times because I don't want that test. I try not to think about nothing when I read through the book of Job. I try not to draw any parallels to Job. In fact, normally I call the book Job. I'm going to be in Job today. I don't even want to mention this guy. I don't want to remind God that I'm in the book of Job. Job's in the midst of this, and God begins to deal with him. Hast thou given the horse strength? Hast thou clothed his neck with thunder? So God's going to take the horse, pull the horse up, and he's going to look at the horse as the animal of strength, the animal of war. Unlike the oxen, which would be the agricultural animal of productivity that is yoked in order that you might be productive, and we should be yoked to Jesus for productivity. Productivity is different than the horse's position. God is going to lift the horse up, and he's going to begin to define some things in the horse. Hast thou given the horse strength? So God's saying, did you give the horse strength? No, I gave the horse strength. Did you wrap his neck and clothe his neck with thunder? His mane is that of thunder when he rides. Can you make him afraid as a grasshopper? Oh, what a reference that God uses here. For the grasshopper is nothing more than a reference to the scared Jews that were spies, the 10 scared Jews that went into out of the 12. 10 came back and said, we are but grasshoppers in the midst of the giants. God addresses that. Just because you think you're a grasshopper, you think that the horse looks at the grasshopper and says, oh, I am scared? No, he snuffs them. The horse doesn't look at the adversary and get fearful because of size. Canst thou make him afraid as a grasshopper? The glory of his nostrils is terrible. I don't know if you we're not in the day where horses rode into battle, but if you were in the day where horses, you'd have to probably get, some movies. There's a good war horse movie that you can watch on that. The snouting of the horse as it's set. That almost sounded too good. I feel like a horse right now, you know what I'm saying? Just like the size of the horse, the armor on the horse. If a gladiator came in here, a Roman soldier on a war horse that marched through the town, and you begin to hear the clicking of the horse and the snout of the nostrils, you'd be fearful of the rider on the horse. We know this because you go to the New Testament, and when God wants to show Jesus coming back in the apocalypse and dealing with the latter days, he isn't coming back meek and lowly and riding on a donkey any longer. He's coming on a horse. When John needed to see the terror of the last days, he looks up and sees the riders of the 4 horsemen. Horse. When he sees the horse galloping through the sky, he looks and says, oh my God. He paweth in the valley, rejoiceth in his strength. He just don't care. He's gonna paw in the valley, paws on it, sticks his hoof in the ground. He rejoices in his strength. He's proud, rejoices in his strength. He goeth on to meet the armed men. He mocks at fear. He's not afraid. He's not affrighted. Neither turn he's back from the sword. You pull a sword on a horse, the war horse is like, yeah, good luck. I'm going to turn my rear end towards you, and I'm going to kick you like you've never been kicked before. Pretty good illustration there. He goeth on to meet the armed men. There's a valley of armed men with swords and the rider of the horse. You don't see in these older movies, you don't see in real life the horse getting fearful, looking up at the rider, saying to the rider, they have swords. What do? We're not gonna go in there. They got arrows. Horse doesn't, horse don't care. Rider's on the horse. Rider leans over, speaks a word to the horse, off. Running through the soldiers, plowing them over in the field. Doesn't care. To the Jews, when they turned around and they seen Pharaoh's horses and chariots, fear struck in them. The galloping of the horses. You still with me? Is this? He mocks at fear. He mocks at fear. Neither turneth back from the sword. The quiver rattleth against him, the glittering spear and the shield. He swalloweth the ground with the fierceness and rage. Neither believeth he that he is of the sound of the trumpet. So he just waits for the sound of the trumpet. He saith among the trumpeters, ha ha. He smelleth the battle afar off, the thunder of the captains and the shouting. When he hears the trumpet of the army of the other side, he gets excited. Finally, they're going to come out and play. I've been waiting for this. Let's open up a can of whip. I know we're in church, we can't say it, but in my church I could. People got used to me, kind of. You know what I'm saying? Whip asteroids. I don't know, I just adds. The Bible has shit 'em wood in the Old Testament. You know what I'm saying? I just collect these terms. You know what I'm saying? Holy shit 'em wood. That's right out of the Bible. It's all sequenced just like that. And Moses used holy shit 'em wood. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure you're awake. You all right there, Edis? Yeah. Edis is like, we can use that in church? He smelleth the battle afar off, the thunder of the captains and the shouting. The psalmist said in Psalm 20, verse 7, some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord. We use that as if that the trust in the chariot and the trust in the horse is somehow denying us trusting in the Lord. That's not saying that. It's saying that some actually trust because there is something to put trust in that. Doesn't take from us trusting in the Lord. The strength of the horse doesn't pull from the trust of the Lord. It's identifying that the horse is the symbol of warfare and strength. So I was getting stressed out leading sheep because I wasn't training horses. Let me say that one more time. So God, looking at Job, was saying, you are to me a horse, not a sheep. To Jeremiah, he was saying, I want you to run with a horse. You are to me a horse, not a sheep. I need you to act like a horse. I need you to gallop like a horse. I need you to be fearless like a horse. I need you to be able to enter into battle like a horse. There are the tendencies and nature of the horse leader that is different than a sheep. And we have spent so much time trying to develop sheep into horses that it doesn't work. We've tried to make sheep leaders, and you can't make sheep leaders. Leading sheep is different than training horses. You don't train sheep, because that's bad. We've been waging war, and pastors been mounting sheep going into battle. Looking stupid. And the world looks at us as we come on sheep. Bah, bah. My God is great. My God is awesome. Go get them, sheep. Then you turn around, you realize the 99 are gone. You keep chasing the one. You can't find the one. You're like consumed with it. I get the sheep all together. I got to go chase the one. Where's that one? Where's Sally? Sally met a guy. Again? Oh my God, like the 8th guy she met. Now she's gone? Damn sheep. Getting stressed out. Too many sheep. Too many sheep in the church. Get rid of some of them. Shear them. I donated sheep to other churches that needed church planting. Local church comes in, they're like, we need members. I got some. They're going to end up with you anyway because they stray. Right? At some point, they're going to end up with you. I got about 10 families I'd like to give you. I'll gift them to you. I'll pay you. I'll pay you to take them. I'll come with them so that they feel really good. You think I'm joking? Oh, no. I donate sheep. We good? We still good? I'm all right? I'm sorry. So I learned a lesson years ago, and I felt like the Lord was showing me something here in the development and segregation and separation of the makeup of my congregation. And I had confused sheep, and I had expected too much from sheep. So I had to separate the sheep from the horses. This is characteristics in nature. Our congregation, our church is strong on leadership. We attract horses. We attract horse-style leaders versus sheep. Sheep come because they feel protected in the midst of the horses. Horses don't respond. They don't react the same way. When circumstances hit in the church and crisis happens, my horse team doesn't respond the same way that my sheep team does. My sheep are in the corner shivering. What are we going to do, Pastor John? What are we going to do? The horse are figuring out issues, and they are in battle, and they are figuring out battle strategies, and they are beginning to get their swords ready to go. The footmen are getting ready to mount the horses to go into battle. They're just looking to be released. They're entrepreneurs. They're A-type leaders. They're horses. They're not threatened by this stuff. Crisis happens. They're like, what's up? Let's deal with this. Even the adversary doesn't attack the horse the same way. Does that make sense? Wolves don't like horse. You don't see the wolf chasing, like, you don't see that. You don't go through National Geographic and the horse is being surrounded by the wolf. Horses want to be left alone. Sheep need to be herded. Put all the sheep in the same thing. They're all flocking together, all the sheep. Meh, meh, meh. They're all in a little pen together. Horse is in a stall by himself. Leave me alone. Come in my stall, I'll smack you. Right? Just, I don't need you. I don't need you. I don't need you. I don't need you. I don't need you over there. I don't need you. Fair enough? I mean, I'll take it a little further. I had to train them separately. I used to train all potential leaders the same. Problem was there were some sheep leaders, and there was some sheep, and there were some horses in the same group, and it was frustrating. So I'd say something strong and apologize to the sheep. Sorry. You got to pull out your sword and fight. People are like, oh. Different content, different process, different mentors. Not all mentors can train horses. Not all mentors can train horses. Not all of my pastors can train horses. I actually had to do a deep dive into the quality of the mentors and the makeup of my pastoral team, because some of my pastoral team leaned more towards being a shepherd, and a shepherd needs to be with the sheep, but a horse trainer needed to be with the horse. The horse trainer would put a horse in a pen all by himself and train the horse in the midst of a round, isolated, ranch area that was sectioned off with a rope tied to the horse's neck, and they would go around in a circle, and that whole training process was totally different. It was one-on-one. It was getting trust built between the horse and the person who is not going to break the horse, but to have the potential to saddle the horse. You don't saddle sheep. That's our problem in the 21st century. We got too many sheep around us that have not transformed themselves into the potential of leadership. We've tried to create sheep leaders, and you can't create sheep leaders. I'm here to tell you, you will be frustrated if you try to keep making sheep leaders. That's why sheep need shepherds. Jesus didn't turn to other sheep. He turned to the disciples and said, look at them sheep. I need you to deal with them sheep. He chose horses. He chose thieves, Judas. He chose tax collectors. He chose fishermen, foul-mouthed, cussing, beer-drinking fishermen, and said, I could build a kingdom around you. Right? Men who are willing to go out for God's deadliest catch. Men who are used to being up the creek without a paddle. Is there? I could use that characteristic. All I got to do is figure out how to saddle you, right? All I got to do is figure out how to get you in a ring one-on-one so I can begin to get you to trust me, to get a rope around your mouth, to get a bit in the horse's mouth, so that I can ride you into war. We good? Are we good? So I've tried to make sure that the natural, there's something that would be naturalized. That makes sense. So there's a naturalization of your gifting and a naturalization of your gifting. And for many years, the world has tried to shape pastors into what their version of what we should be. Worse is congregations tried to shape us into what we should be. So congregations are just are we good? I love my church. I love my congregation, but they annoy me. Right? And we had to navigate their view of what my wife should be like and what my kids should be like. Like they actually had an opinion in this, you know what I'm saying? And so we had to navigate the conceptual idea of what the pastor's family should be. Kids playing violin, you know what I mean, on the stage and singing, "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." Hi, Papa. Was it right? The church had this concept of the preacher, and the preacher tried to meet the mold of that. And I couldn't meet that mold. I didn't fit in that mold. So at some point, I just simply said, "That's it. We got to break the mold here. I'm never going to be that type of leader. I just don't. We're going to keep blowing this church up every year, because sooner or later you're going to see the real me. So let's stop trying to hide the real me into some type that matches what the hallmark version of a preacher is supposed to be." Does that? You good? Okay. Shepherds don't attract horses, they attract sheep. Which is fine. That's fine. I have shepherds on staff, and they attract sheep. And I know the difference in some of the individuals. So there's this thing. So I have greeters in my foyer, and when I'm done ministering, the greeters force me to go to the foyer to meet people. They force me. I got Mark Gustafari there every single week. "Let's go in the foyer." Like, I don't want to go in the foyer. I just got done preaching. I'm whipped. I poured out. I don't want to see people. Get in the foyer. We got to grow a church. Okay, let me get in the foyer. And there's a consistency. Please hear this out. This is nothing negative. There's a consistency. Sheep say to individuals, I want to go say hi to Pastor John, but I just don't know if I don't know if I want to walk up to him. Horses on the other side come right up to me. "Hey, Pastor John, very nice to meet you. I run a company, and I'd like to know if I can meet with you. I have 16,000 employees. I own a law firm, and I'd like to meet with you. I'm the town councilman for the local city. I'm a banker. I'm the vice president of a bank." Horses have no problem walking up to me because they see a horse trainer. Sheep have a problem because they get sheepish. "Pastor John, he preached a powerful message. He's going to whack me when we get to the foyer." So why would I go out there and become sheepish? I am who I am. Those sheep are attracted to go to Pastor Sam, Pastor Ken, great shepherds, and they begin to develop them. Does that make sense? Addis comes into church. He's not attracted to the rest of the pastors. He's attracted to me. He has leadership. He's got probably over 500 individuals under him in his I Am Academy that he oversees. He's a leader. He wants leadership. He's not attracted to the other pastors. He loves the other pastors. This is great. I want to have coffee and picnics with them. But when he wants mentorship, he goes to a horse trainer. Is that making sense, kind of? And so I had to get comfortable, and my leadership had to get comfortable of understanding, how do I speak to a sheep and how do I speak to a horse? This is 101 in my leadership team. This content is 101. Call any one of my pastors and they will tell you, oh yeah, that's a horse. Oh yeah, that's a sheep. And they know the communication style that needs to work with sheep. And they're very cognizant of developing sheep and developing horses and separating them in a training process. So we get together, we identify individuals that we would consider to be horses, horse leaders versus sheep. Sheep constantly need attention. Horses want to be left alone. Sheep that just, no one says anything to me. I feel alienated in this church. The church is getting too big. Pastor, I don't know. This church is just too big for me. Feel like I'm not getting the attention I deserve. Really? Is this making sense? Have you heard this before? Have you heard the complaints of this? And so we do small groups and we spend more money, more energy, more finances trying to find the one that left the 99, the 99. The sheep can't even take a bath without drowning. They don't know how to graze, and read Psalm 23. The horse carries the rider, the shepherd carries the sheep. You see the little photo of Jesus with a sheep around his neck and he's carrying the sheep. Totally different than him coming back on a white horse. Jesus, I don't need you to carry me. I'm here to carry you. You're the rider, I'm the horse. I get my strength from knowing the rider's going to drive me into battle. Is this? You can push and press horse leaders. You can communicate with a horse leader and say, man, get your crap together. Stop treating your wife like that if you want to reach the potential. You don't have to dance around the lilies of the valley just to get a message across to them. Is that? Horses run into battle. Sheep run away from battle. Sheep, in order to contribute, there's only a couple things that sheep can contribute to the fold. Some of you, you're like, oh my God. This is leadership. They contribute wool. So the shepherd shears the sheep. Does anybody know what that is? Takes the wool off. Sheep should be financially contributing. The shearing of the wool is the contribution to the fold to make sure that we have all the necessary things that we need. Sheep should be in a process of contributing that. And sheep make good lamb chops. No, I'm just, I actually don't like lamb. That was a joke. She's just like, so what are we going to do here? What's on the menu today? It's important to separate, and I want to kind of dig in, if you can, let me just dig into this a little bit. So sheep are herded. They are considered a naive animal. They drowned in water, they must be grazed, they must be shepherded, and they must be protected. Those are the basic elements of what we need to provide for the individuals that are in our congregation to identify those sheep. They needed to be herded. They always need to be in groups. They need to be in groups. They need to have fellowship on a regular basis. They feel more comfortable when they're in the midst of groups. And so this is important for us. And that meets a need in the sheep. So we have small groups. We have certain things that are designed in order to develop and to meet the need of the greater population in the church, which is the population of sheep. They have numerous predators. Number one is the wolf. So the numerous predators. So we always have to make sure that we are able to surround all of those gatherings with enough backup, because they have numerous predators. Wolves that come into the church are going to find sheep, not horses. They're going to avoid the horses. They're going to avoid the strong leaders, and they're going to find themselves. We have an influx of individuals that got, they had former churches before. They're in your church, or they're a church within their own mind. They're famous in their own mind. I'm a prophet. I speak to pastors. I got a calling. I bring correction to pastors. It's like, really? Who brings correction to you? So I'm a little bit of a different leader. I engage that. I pull out a sword. I gather that stuff. I rebuke them. I'd have no problem saying, you are the problem with the church. I enjoy the ping pong match. I rescue my pastors. So I'll deal with him. Come here. You're an orphan. You're illegitimate. You're an abomination to the kingdom. You need submission in your life. Let me prophesy of you. Close your lips. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. They're not used to that. I'm coming in on a horse. What, you want to go? You want to go? Sorry, I got a twitch. I start gathering some of the Italians. Go get Di Francesco, get Gustafieri. All my boys start surrounding me. What's going on here, Pastor? I'm only serious. Got a lot of Italians. Let me go a little farther. Well, you break into my house. I'm going to pull out a sword. And if that don't work, I got my 45 in my back pocket. So the sword says, oh, Jesus, let me not miss. As I reach for the 45, and if that don't work, I'll get my AR, which is still grandfathered in, and I'm not kidding. Funny story. Obviously, a couple of years ago, we had riots in the street, and we had the season of free love in Seattle. Joke. Armed militia in the streets. And my wife turns to me and says, how much ammo do you have? And like any good husband would say, not enough. Sure, this is true. She goes, how many guns do you have? Not enough. Not enough. And she released me. I go, she goes, you should get more. Oh, that's all she had to say. That's like a woman shopping for shoes. It's like, are you kidding me? What? Oh my God. Answer the prayer. I ran out. I got 9 mils. We're moving from one house to the next, right? And we got this gap in between. She said to me the other day, what did we do with the cash, the gold, the silver, and the guns? I got to find a spot for them. Hey, you come into my house, I'm going to shoot you. Not think twice about it. I won't even be convicted. I'm thinking if you're a thief, that's your best day. Because I could do last right. I could shoot you and do last rites all in the same thing. Right? Boom. Oh, man, you're about to see Jesus. You ought to give your life to Jesus. Thank God you broke into my house, not the neighbor next door. Can you breathe? Blink your eye twice if you accept Jesus. Because you're about ready to see him. Right? Good. We used to have a bat. Years ago, we had a bat when we first got saved. You know what I'm saying? And my wife wasn't good with the bat. You know what I'm saying? She would just, she's like, there's a sound in the house. I go get him. Go see who broke in. If it's really bad, get me. All right, we'll move on. Sheep are very difficult to be trained. Like, what do you train a sheep to do? Yeah. Go in circles. Like, stay in the pen. Don't go over there. Eat here. Eat here. They need to be told where to eat. The problem with our sheep, they eat everywhere. They come to church and I heard a preacher say, I was on Google and on YouTube. Why are you eating every possible place? Why are you eating in foreign grass? Eat the grass that God gave you. This is the church that you've been called to. Practice the message you heard on Sunday. My God, it's got to take you at least 7 days to put this to practice. And then you can come back for another feeding next week. They cannot be ridden or driven. And there are various types of sheep. I'll just mention one of them. There are various types. So the sheep fall into different categories. There's what's called the hermit sheep. You can tell I did a lot of study on this. So this didn't come from someone else. This came from me saying, Lord, give me a better revelation of sheep. So the hermit sheep get depressed. Gnats affect sheep. When they buzz around their head, the sheep begin to go crazy. And certain sheep will try to dash their head against a stone because of the gnats. They get in there and they're attracted, and the gnats, they get around, and the sheep start to do this, and they become mad, and they become crazy, and they dash their head upon a stone, and they need help. Because the simplest things distract the sheep. Sheep's just going along and bzz, this way, bzz, this way, bzz, this way. Where's Joe? He hasn't been to church in a few weeks. Gnats got him. Gnats got him. Couple old friends, you know what I'm saying? They were buzzing around for a while, and we haven't seen them. Gnats got them. Depressed. I feel so depressed. Pastor, I just feel depressed. We have no toilet paper in the house. I went to Walmart. We're out. Sheep have the tendency of going mad. They begin to go crazy. Bible says it is the nature of sin. We have all, like sheep, gone astray. Does that make sense? Now it makes sense. To the shepherd, it makes sense when Jesus uses these terms like we, like sheep, have gone astray. It makes sense. We were distracted with the gnats of life. We went after things that caused us to stop grazing in the good field, to go into rushing water rather than still water. We needed to be carried, and it didn't matter who was the shepherd for us, but we were carried by foreign individuals, and it has affected us. Horses, on the other side, horses don't get trained in groups. Horses don't get trained in groups. In a horse ranch, they put one horse in the ring, and the trainer must gain the horse's trust. It's an issue of trust. It's an issue of trust. I had many sheep lead the congregation over the last year and a half. I didn't have any horses lead the congregation because the horses trusted what I was doing and the content that I was given and the platform that I had with them. They trusted the downline of relationship between us so that I can say some things that were tough. If I needed to, I could stick a spike in the side if I had to, in order to, I could turn the horse quickly and move the horse in a different direction. And if need be, ride the horse into danger, but they trusted me that I was still gonna be there with them in the midst of danger. But the sheep misinterpreted my purity and misinterpreted my view of the kingdom. And so when I wanted a Supreme Court justice to be put in, and I didn't care, Trump only had another 30 days to go, that this godly woman who was pro-life could be snuck into the Supreme Court. Put her in the Supreme Court. Defend my rights. Some sheep interpreted that and said, you're a Trump supporter. I never said I was a Trump supporter or a Biden supporter or any time. I'm a God supporter. And any man, any person, any candidate that is going to vote kingdom and begin to introduce kingdom rule, I don't really care if he's white or black, Democrat or Republican. There's an agenda here that needs to be furthered in the midst of this. Horses knew that. My horses, they knew that. They were like, yeah, that's right. Why? Because they operate in a different level. They understand the landscape. The sheep are just going around towards the next thing, but they're going to give us free college. All the poor people that are coming in and they need to come in and we need to house them. We need to do that. Okay, well, open up your house and let them live there. We need to have an open door policy. Leave your door unlocked. I'm coming over tonight. I want to come into your refrigerator. I want to take your food. I want to eat your pasta. Oh, you want the country to be open, but not your house. You hypocrite. I'd apologize, but let me just move on. If you're a horse, none of that affects you. It doesn't affect you. You're mature enough to spit out the bones in that, right? You can hope you're not shivering. Oh, Pastor John's a racist. That junk crept into our churches. It divided families over the last 2 years. I had some African Americans in my congregation say to me, either I'd never said enough, or I didn't say enough, or I needed to say more, I needed to do this and all of this. And I run prison programs. I run drug rehabilitation programs. I run inner city family training for families in the midst of this. I poured literally on my own money hundreds of thousands of dollars into inner city communities, dealing and trying to upgrade any minority groups within our community. You're going to challenge me now because for some reason you think the way I vote now defines me a certain way. Shame on you. Horses need to be saddled to reach their potential. Horses need to be saddled to reach their potential. They will buck and they will try to throw the rider off. And if you're mentoring a horse and a horse bucks you, you need to understand that is totally different than what a sheep would do. But that is the process. That is the process for you to be able to get a saddle. And trust needs to be regained. Okay, that's good. We're going to try again. We're going to go through this again. We're going to take the saddle. The goal here is to be able to saddle that horse in order to get the saddle on the horse in order to drive the horse to its destiny. Horse has a destiny, and to reach its destiny, it needs to be saddled, needs to have a rider. Problem is the horse has spent so much time riding by itself with no saddle, it doesn't know the potential of God mounting the horse and riding that horse into destiny. Once you define to them that God has a plan for them and that they could be a stallion for the kingdom, horses respond to that. They respond to a challenge. Horses need to be challenged. Sheep need to be grazed. Horses need to be turned towards God. Does that make sense? Horses need to be turned towards God. When I see a horse and they begin to, I see the potential in it, and my goal is to turn them towards God. Does that make sense? If I could get them to turn towards God, they can reach their potential. Potential for the kingdom. You don't break a horse, you build a horse. Trainers must prepare the horse for distractions. So the horse is put in a trailer and driven around. Horse is put in a trailer and driven around. Must be prepared for distractions. That's why they ride in a trailer. That's why when you see horses that are used by the police department, those horses had to be brought around people. They're in the midst of parades, and there's drums, and there's all this, and the horse is just sitting there on the side, just watching the parade go by. Watching the parade go by. Fireworks are going to boom, boom, all this. The horse isn't spooked. Horse is just sitting there, cops sitting on a horse. In Christianity, that's what we need. We need horses that don't get spooked by the enemy. They don't get spooked by a service. Is this making sense? Many of our sheep, they get spooked very quick. Oh! Horses, they need to be trained for that. And horses must lead in the midst of distractions. Horses must lead in the midst of distractions. To Job, God said the horse couldn't be turned away from battle. It smelt the battle. It smelt the war. And the rider couldn't even stop the horse from being torn. Horses will jump off a cliff with their master and their rider on it They're not moved. They gallop, and they don't care if there's a cliff at the end. They're going to ride with their rider into war. Arrows in their sides, hoofs in their quarters. They're going to ride into war. With every breath, they're going to fight. They have the power of focus. They don't care if 10,000 fall on the right and 10,000 on the left. Horses base their existence on strength and destiny, reaching their potential. Sheep base their existence on feeling. Sheep base their existence on feeling. Do you feel okay today? Praise God, it's good to be in church today. How's everyone feel? Feel all right? Feel safe? Good? Everyone feel safe? Feel good? Feel good? Pastor John, I just don't feel saved. I just don't feel like God loves me. I don't feel like people like me. I just don't feel like I'm reaching my destiny. I just don't feel like this church is doing it for me. I just have feelings that I don't even know what the feelings are. I feel like I have feelings that the feelings have feelings, and I'm trying to discover those feelings. And if I ever could understand those feelings, I would feel better. But I can't feel better because I feel worse all the time. Could you help me in the midst of these feelings? No. Because I feel like I don't even want to be around you. Right? I don't feel like this church is the church for you. I feel like you should go to the church across the street. There's a pastor in a town over that's a wolf. I feel like that's where you belong. Because they make you feel really good. Why? Because they got dinner on the mind. Oh, come on in. Come on in. We love you. Bib on. Pastor's coming out. I'm going to take some of your congregation. You're not getting really many of them, and the ones you do get, I would have given to you. Right? I'm going to steal your sheep. You probably could. You don't even have to do it. Put a sign out front. Right? Free coffee. I don't worry about relating with other churches when you have your horses, and well, because they're horses, they just have a different mindset. They have a different concept. The sheep go out, and you never know if they come back. The horses go to war, and they come back to the stall. Does that make sense? And they come back to the store. You give them assignments. I need you to go here. We're going to plant a church in Dallas. We're going to go here. We're going to plant this. We're going to do some relief efforts. We're going to go into torn down areas and rebuild certain areas. We're going to deal. I send my horses. I don't send the sheep in there. If I send sheep, I attach them to a horse because they need to be carried. Come on, get on. Right? Got a bag on the side for one sheep, bag on the other side for the other sheep. Carrying a little trailer with seats in the back, getting there. It's like a chariot thing here, you know what I'm saying? A horse will carry you through, praise God. We'll get you to the other side. Just sit there and stop bang. Please, for the love of Jesus. It's just all bad. I've made the mistake of promoting sheep and hiring sheep. Oh, stupid man I am. Every day you gotta come in and, where's so-and-so today? She didn't feel good. Or half of the 7 hours of work was counseling. Then you feel really bad. Well, it's a church. I mean, I felt like we needed to give her counsel, or we need to give him counsel. And so what we do is we maneuver certain people. So I tell Pastor Stan, because he's the executive campus pastor, and so people, and we had one person, just every week there was something. I would call, I said, what's Jason doing? Well, he's been in the office all morning, his wife's not talking to him, he's got a problem with his kid and everything. I go, he's supposed to be doing his job. Why are you letting him sit in the office? I don't pay him to talk to you, because not only that, because now I'm actually getting, it's double the issue. So I'm paying you to talk to him, paying him to talk to you. Do that on your lunch or after work. He's there to work, do his job. If he worked for an electrical company, he wouldn't be able to go in and tell them all the problems that he has and all these different things, or fire him. You want me to fire him? Yes! Fire him. What are people going to think? Who cares? You see the dilemma of being a pastor? Pastor John's got no grace. What are you talking about? Is that? I'm not trying to win a popularity contest. You're hired for a job. He needs you to do it. Okay, so leave him in the job. Hire someone else to do his job. Leave them both on staff. See how far we get with that. Like, I have to stop, right? No, I mean, don't I what time is it? Somebody give me a clock, please.
I love him, but I'd rather hear you.
Listen to my wife.
She's the rider, you're the horse. My wife says she's the neck, I'm the head. I woke up with some neck pain too. Do we even have a time? Does anybody know what time it is? No one, you people are bad. Okay. Okay. We still good? I'll go a little farther. Write down servant. This would be the last thing I give you on this section. Servant and son. As we interpret sheep and horse, let us now move to servant and son, downline of that servant and son, because we deal with that. And in the same category, we had to deal with this. And it is my belief that true biblical mentorship is a soul tie. True biblical mentorship is a soul tie. So when Israel needed the Passover lamb to come, the Passover to happen, God said, take a lamb, slay the lamb. The relationship between the horse and the rider is intimate. In fact, it's believed that the horse can see into the soul, and the soul of the rider can see into the horse, and there's a connection between the horse and the rider. Does that make sense? So when you're a horse with Jesus, you have a connection to Jesus, which is totally different than the sheep has with Jesus, which is based on feeling, who Jesus looked on compassion, told the disciples to feed the sheep. He created miracles. He filled the wine vats in order for the sheep. He gave them fish and he gave them bread. But he left with the disciples because the disciples were horses and they were sheep. He had compassion on them, but he built his disciples. He rode the disciples and fed the sheep. My relationship with Jesus is different than that a sheep has with Jesus. Does that make sense? I feel there's a soul connection with him. He's the rider. When he turns me towards battle, I'm fine with that. And so I believe that true mentorship is a soul tie. Soul ties are not just done sexually. That we've misinterpreted the whole soul tie thing. Adam had a soul tie to God. Eve had a soul tie to the serpent. She had an unconsummated marriage. Adam and Eve didn't have intimacy in the sexual area. They only had intimacy in the natural arena. They had no offspring. In fact, in Judaism, the naming of something meant that you had authority over it. So wars and angels were sent to earth in order to make sure that names that God wanted to have over individuals, because names meant that that person was brought under your leadership, brought under your protection. So Jesus says to the disciples, I need to bring you under leadership. I need to bring you under my protection. So Simon called Bartholomew, I will call you now Peter. Why? I need to change your name because I got to bring you out from under your father's lineage and bloodline and into my bloodline. So in order for Adam to have the likeness of God and the image of God, image and likeness are two different things. Image meant to see Adam was to see God because he was the image of God. Likeness meant that Adam needed to operate like God. He had God in him. God had to get out of him. So God creates the animals, brings them to Adam, and Adam names the animals. And that was the exercise of his authority in the garden. He named everything in the garden except for one thing. Everything was brought under his authority except one created being, and that was Eve. He called her woman. Read your Bible. He never gave her a name. After they're thrown out of the garden, in Genesis chapter 3, looking in verse 20, Adam and Eve are put out of the garden. The first thing Adam does, it says, and Adam called his wife's name Eve. Yeah, a little late, boy. That's why the serpent found the ability to have a soul tie with Eve, because she was still just woman, not knowing who her head was. Whose authority am I under? Whose authority am I under? We still good? I'm sorry I dug into your time. Samuel chapter 18, verse 1 is not about some type of inappropriate relationship between Jonathan and David. Some interpret this as that. And it came to pass when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own. And Saul took him that day and would not let him go no more into his father's house. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant together because he loved him as his own soul. There is mentoring relationship. The deepest level of mentoring relationship is a soul tie, and in relationships, you are susceptible to betrayal, heartbreak, and cheating, the violation of trust. Mentoring is not informational, it's relational and informational. If you want just information, just buy my book. That's different. And that is a form of information, and you can buy the books of individuals, but true mentorship is based on not just information, but relationship. You can obtain information and revelation and motivation from anything. Mentoring is a little bit different. I used to think when I first got saved that Paul had offspring and that his natural sons was Titus and Timothy. I didn't realize that when he said to my son Titus and my son Timothy, that those were his spiritual sons. In fact, sometimes spiritual sons have more value than natural sons, because natural sons base their existence in the natural, not in the spiritual. Spiritual sons base their connection in the spiritual, that there's a divine higher purpose to the relationship, and they relate to you based on the higher purpose, not the natural purpose. So though you don't look the same, and though you didn't come from the same lineage, there's a different bloodline that runs through them, and that is different. That is different. Spiritual sons, spiritual daughters. This isn't nothing you've already probably known. I mean, I would think that you probably knew this, but let me just separate this for a second on this, because there's vertical relationships that impact horizontal influence. Vertical relationships that impact horizontal influence. Horizontal. So by me and Ed is building a vertical relationship, attaching to the purposes of God, we increase our horizontal influence on the landscape of earth. Does that? And I'm only using Ed because he's with me today, and he is a spiritual son, and God has put us together for a greater purpose than just him attending church. My approach to and view of mentorship and spiritual offspring has evolved over the years. A servant inherits the co-labor, spoils, and advancement of the master's house. A servant inherits the co-labor, spoils, and advancement of the master's house. A son inherits the master's house. So a son gets the house, the servant inherits the ability to co-labor. They begin to share in the spoils and the advancement of the master's house. The problem in church, just as we try to make horses out of sheep, we try to make sons out of servants. Stop trying to make sons out of servants. Not all servants are sonship material. Let me say that one more time. I know, you must think that I am so bad, but I'm really not. I just understand the difference. I just understand the difference of the population that God has caused me to lead. And I'm trying to separate them in order to bring health and vitality and to have two congregations, two churches that can make an impact in the world in which we live in, that are not going to run from battle, but are going to run into battle if need be. I think church is a lot more spiritual and a lot more spiritual warfare going on. There's a lot of things that are happening, and my eye is open to those things prophetically, and I recognize that we need to build deeper right now than we've ever built before. So we've returned back to those basic redigging the wells of making sure that we're developing the horses, strengthening the horses, ordering more saddles, ordering more swords, ordering more things that are preparing us for an uncertain future that I believe by the time we get to the next election, we might have civil war again, and you need to at least be prepared for it. If you try to make sons out of servants, you will be betrayed. In the master's house, there are servants and sons. This is true in the church. We talk about the prodigal son, and we talk about the two sons in the story of the prodigal. But don't forget that the father said to the servants, go kill the fatted calf. There were still servants in the house. So there was a father, there were sons, and there were servants. Salvation is different than anointing and assignment. Available to every one of us is salvation. And through salvation, you become a son and daughter of God. Totally different than sonship when it comes to mentorship and leadership. That's totally different. So Paul, writing to Timothy, wasn't saying to him, thou co-son with God through salvation and Jesus, my fellow son. He wasn't saying that. He said, oh, you're a son too. Oh, you're a daughter of God and you're a son of God also. Yay, we're all sons of God. No. Yes, we are all sons and daughters of God. But I have spiritual sons and I have spiritual daughters. That's different. That's a level of intimacy on a level of mentorship and leadership that is necessary. So Paul, writing to Timothy, is writing to him like a son, his offspring. So we are sons of God, servants of men. Here's the truth. In ministry, church, and business, there is a necessity for servants. Servants receive a recompense solely for their service. Service for rewards. Does that make sense? How many have a job? You work and you receive a reward for your work. In ministry and in church and in business, there should also be in the church workers, servants. They are still sons and daughters of God, but they may never become sons and daughters of mentorship and sons and daughters, and they may never develop into horses, and they may never catch the vision to a depth of leadership that's beyond measure, though they're in your church for 20 years. They may never relate to you and see you as a spiritual father, as a mentor in their life, it's just a reality. That's just a reality. In fact, that's why larger churches grow, because most people don't want to enter into that level of relationship. They'd rather be one of 1,000 than one of 10. Because when you're in a church of 10, then you stick out like a sore thumb. So they'd rather go to a church of 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 so they can come and go when they want and not have that relationship to have to be saddled, to have to be pressured, to have to ask to be in ministry. They want to be servants, not sons. That's okay. Help us pay the bills. Right? That's okay. That's okay. I'm okay with having servants in the house. Is this making sense? The definement, not servants like you're my servant. Please have a mature understanding of that. Oh, he views some people as servants. No, servants in the kingdom. Their relationship to the church is based on the fact that this is the church. They're going to get involved in some ministry, but they're never going to align to you in the greater vision. And if something happens, they may leave and go to another church. They're not bound to the church like other individuals are. I have some people in the church, they are tried, true and true. We've been through some pits together. We've been through some wars together. Our relationship is different. There are other people, they get to a certain point, I think God's calling us out. Okay, praise God, well bless you. I got that, I get that. You served here faithfully, and now the Lord you have something else that you want to go serve. We release them, we bless them. They haven't been negative. They've been great people in the church. They've been viable in ministry. They've been awesome. They've been great supporters, but they've been servants. I tell my wife, don't weep over this. Oh, but people are leaving. Okay. Some we wanted to leave. Don't put them in the list. Like some of them, you were shouting hallelujah. They've been faithful servants. They're moving. They're going somewhere else. That's fine. They need something else that they have not found here. They needed the word. They needed a place to be developed, but they weren't going to develop into horses. They weren't going to develop into becoming connected at a soulish level. Does that make sense? So I don't try to get people to connect at a soulish level. I want to connect with you. I don't want to connect with you. I don't want to know you. I don't spread my love everywhere. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, meet me after church. You know what I'm saying? I want to get a soul connection with you. So, hey, I don't. Discernment must be developed to choose correctly. Servants, mentees, and sons. Not all people you mentor are going to be sons. They will be mentees. Paul mentored Mark. Barnabas mentored Mark. There was no sonship relationship. Paul's relationship to Paul and Titus is totally different than his relationship with other individuals. He had other people that he poured into. He had Aquila and Priscilla that he poured into. He had other individuals that he developed as elders, but there was a special connection between him and Titus and him and Timothy that was on the level of being a son. He had other mentees that he mentored, and that's fine. I mentor people all the time. I'm here mentoring you. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I also have, is this making sense? So I just have to, in my mind and in our leadership team, we had to have an understanding, sons and daughters, mentees, people that are worth the investment because they want to learn. They want to be mentored. They have the greatest potential to become a son and daughter, but that's really something that God does. I think I meddled in that arena too much, walking around, you're a son. Like trying to make people sons, like every week was an adoption. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, adoption's open. You know what I'm saying? If anybody wants to be adopted, see me after church. We're going to close it down for 3 months, and then we're going to have another cycle of adoptions. We finally just shut it down. We don't define people like that. It's a rarity for us to walk around and say, well, that's like a spiritual son and daughter. Yeah. We don't just callously hand that out or just like freely give that out. Nah. Here's a group that we're mentoring. We have mentoring groups. We have things like that. Very important to have those things. And we've separated those things for us in order for us to get a better understanding. I've often said, what came first, the egg or the chicken? Do we choose a son or does the son choose us? Do we choose a spiritual daughter or does the daughter choose us? And we come to the place where it becomes a God thing. We don't know who chose who. Does that make sense? It just kind of happened. Did my wife choose me or did I choose her? I don't really know. I feel like I duped her. She was introduced to my business card before she was introduced to me. Is that you know what I'm saying? Just who chose who? We kind of feel like God chose us both. Does that make sense? Like God through his divine purposes connected us And we found each other as we were looking at God. Does that kind of make sense? Same way we met with spiritual sons, and that was just it's a God thing, and it happens. Are you still good? So I would challenge you that in your spheres of influence, in your congregations, in your leadership makeup, that you begin to start thinking about training of horses, the gathering of sheep, the leading of sheep, the development of horses, the connection of sons and servants in the house. We have a big investment in servants in our church. We make a big investment for training and ongoing education, all of that stuff. And that as we move to the future, I pray this content helps you and equips you to make your greatest impact with your least amount of stress. Because ministry is stressful. How many deal with people? How many are in ministry and you deal with people? I've always said I love the steeple, it's just the people. You know what I'm saying? And so very important for you to begin to approach and think ministry a little bit differently. Radical shift. I know a little different and radical is two different parameters, but some of you're going to take this content and say, I need to make some radical changes in the restructuring of how we approach leadership development and who we choose to go into leadership development and how we arrange our groups and our congregations. So with that in mind, give the Lord a round of applause.